Welcome back to some professional Stormgate, or something close to it, as this is the grand finals of Frost Giant Studios' internal developer tournament, with a surprising amount on the line, but more on that in a moment, because more importantly, this is the newest version of Stormgate, and most importantly, this is the version that you and I are going to be able to play during the open beta for Steam Next Fest. If you haven't yet wishlisted, Jimmy, how in about a day after this video comes out, you'll be able to play this version of the game, anyone for free, as long as you wishlist on Steam. So all that in the description. And if you have any issues with ranked 1v1, with balance, with design, or even in co-op, which also has a leveling system and multiple heroes or commander, I'm not sure what we're calling it, you should probably complain to the player in the blue, the human Vanguard player, KDong, because Kevin Dong, is the co-op and balance designer for Stormgate. So he should be the foremost expert, which is why it's a bit embarrassing. He's down 2-0 to Greg, who, to my understanding, is a level designer for the game. And we've skipped to Game 3 because I wanted to show off some of the more dynamic matches. Greg did pull off some strong early strategies, which is the nicest way I've said cheese, to get to this point, but I guarantee you there's going to be some interesting stuff. Even though I know when we're talking about games like this, and I know it's going to look similar to StarCraft and Warcraft, but at the end of the day, a lot of it's going to sound like, and the Bob puts on his robe and wizard hat and convinces the viewer to like and subscribe with an awkward segue. And Jimmy, what are we? 1,243 likes on this video, on this cast, on this grand finals. I'll cast another series, or make a guide, or something. I don't. And you know what? Actually, let's wait till the end of at least the game. Maybe not the whole video, the game. Which might be the video, who knows? But I'll do my best to explain, but I find just sitting here reading off a glossary is probably not the most entertaining. And we have only a rudimentary observing overlay. This is actually a recorded video from the tournament. From Frost Giant, thank you. So, the Infernal host, Greg over here, has started out by building his shrines. He has imps. The Vanguard have bobs. They both mine luminite and therium, or totally not gold, and totally not, I like ore as one of the rocks, which we'll go into the details on that. But you've got your luminite, which you see the imps slapping out of the luminite mine over there. It does have a finite amount. It takes like 10 to 15 minutes. I think closer to 15 to mine out if you have full saturation. But both sides mine approximately the same rate. So the way you go about it is a little bit different. Starting out with the brutes, as well as a gaunt here, taking the vision camp, which will give vision in a pretty visible radius there early on. Greg will be able to protect his base a little bit easier. He's got brutes and gaunts, as well as a fiend, which when brutes die, they automatically, I believe in the newest build, they automatically split into fiends, which it's impossible not to draw comparisons to zerglings. Another mechanic is the infest mechanic, which I'm not huge on the current implementation. The way it works is an infested unit will spawn a fiend when it dies. Now, very important, fiends cannot be infested, so in Infernal versus Infernal, that doesn't work out. But with this single gaunt here to potentially infest any of these Vanguard units, including the Lancers, which have a long-range melee attack that can go through multiple targets, while being probably the tankiest early-game unit. The Vanguard has Bobs, which impossible not to compare to SCVs, but can build with multiple simultaneously, has the overcharge ability, which we just saw used, which increases build speed and the armor of Bobs. I believe damage as well, but I'm not 100% on that. But the Lancers are holding the line here. A couple gaunts on the back line. The barracks forming a bit of a choke point. And since he just used the overcharge, KDong not going to be able to easily pull the Bobs into the fight. But I think that many Lancers, which pound for pound, are going to be able to take on the brutes and the gaunts. You just got to be careful not to let the gaunts snipe off too many Lancers. Otherwise, those fiends might start turning the tide towards you. And even some of the Lancers gaining veterancy here. The veterancy mechanic is Vanguard specific, and actually working out really well for KDong in this early fight. Each level of veterancy gives you a small amount of HP and extra damage. It may be attack speed. It may have been switched from the other builds, but the general, I'd say it is approximately the equivalent of getting a 1-1 upgrade, as there are no basic upgrades like there are in StarCraft 2, though the tech progression is very similar. We have a meat farm, which is the supply building for Infernal Host, which spawns fell hogs over time, which will attack anyone nearby. They're very territorial here on the Shroud, and I think now is a good time to talk about the Shroud mechanic, which the Shroud essentially, there are a few very specific, more advanced things that have changed several times, but generally the Shroud gives you white health is what we're calling it, because calling it shield would be too obvious. But essentially you have another small health bar on top of your health bar, usually like 20 to 50%. I don't think it's 50%. I think it's like 20 to 40% of the HP of a unit can be given white health. So essentially an overshield type of thing over the top. So that allows you to be better off defensively. There are mechanics that allow you to put Shroud out on the field. These Shroud stones are like big creep tumors that shoot. They spread the Shroud around, but are relatively fragile and can be taken down. They're mostly, if a single unit comes by, they will be able to pick it off, but easily crumble to a dozen or so Lancers here. But a medtech getting caught. They do have an attack, but not nearly enough. 3 medtechs out in the field trying to heal, but one of them infested and now turned into feeds that are chasing down the others. And the medtechs on their own, they're pretty tanky, but not nearly tanky enough to be left alone against the Infernal army. The Fiends are chasing it down, and the medtech needs to retreat to some of the reinforcements. KDong was able to take out that cheeky third base out of Greg, but that left the Lancers on the other side of the map. Overcharge used on the Bobs, and that means KDong's spoiling for a fight. Overcharge lasts about 30 seconds, and, well, another key point, by the way, about overcharge. Very interesting for those of you starting out playing Vanguard. It also increases construction speed, which most early game builds, at least from what I've seen, involve overcharging your Bobs and constructing your bases, especially your command post, more quickly. But as we tech up here, I'm not sure if either player has reached Tier 2, which involves building a greater shrine, the equivalent of kind of a lair. Oh, definitely reached Tier 2 as Spriggans are on the field. Spriggans built out of, I want to say, I do have the tech tree on another screen here. I'm admitting it, just to make sure I get everything right. The Twilight Spire. So the Spire builds Spriggans, which are air-based harass units, but since Lancers can't shoot up because their swords just aren't that long, okay, they're normal, average-sized swords for Lancers, and that means the Spriggans are actually going to be able to pick things off. Some of the Exos are rallied out, but KDong right now doesn't have nearly enough, and the Spriggans also benefit from the Shroud, so as long as they're within the Shroud zone, they get that benefit. They also apply an effect which reduces the attack speed, I want to say, of the units they're attacking, which is more designed to help kill static defense than individual units, as the Spriggans have very low DPS overall, but it adds up, especially when the opposing units don't have any anti-air. The Lancers are mostly shrugging it off, but with 6... Is that 6 in total? 7? Enough Spriggans to be more than annoying, and now moderately inconvenient. The Lancers are heading back across the map. The Exos, though, easily pin cushioning one of those Spriggans that sprays a little too close. As long as he gets the Exo upgrade. It looks like the Lancers have their kinetic redirection upgrade. The Bob's trying to construct... Oh, he actually constructed a habitat, not a sentry post. I think that's a mistake. As without the sentry post, a sentry post can be garrisoned by an Exo or other units, and depending on what's garrisoned, it applies a different effect. But if a Bob garrisons or a Exo garrisons in one of those sentry posts, like in the main here, then it turns into a flat cannon, which is, believe it or not, good against air units. But right now, the Exos, he pops in, and there we go. The flat cannon is online. Also works against ground, by the way. But A bit of a misplay from KDong at the third, but the flak cannon knocking out some of the Spriggans. The Lancers are cutting forward. And the Bobs, or not the Bobs, sorry, the Brutes, which they might look tanky, but that's just because, well, every Brute has two fiends inside of them, all right? Warring with each other to get out. And eventually the Lancers will help them out with that. But pound for pound, Lancers, especially with the kinetic redirection upgrade, will be able to take out Brutes in relatively even numbers, despite costing the same amount, as there are not two fiends inside of the Lancer. The kinetic redirection upgrade, by the way, means the Lancer does more it has more attack speed, and it moves faster. Oh my god! I'm sorry, instant replay. We saw on the left side, Flame on Imps. For a cost of Therium, you can turn your Imps into their banelings, okay? The Imps are gone, but he takes out a big chunk. This Weaver out in the corner. Not actually sure what the Weaver's looking to accomplish. The Weaver is a support unit. It has an abduct-like ability, but a Magmadon is stomping its way through. Since the last build, the charge ability was removed and it was replaced with a Trample, which when upgraded can stun units around it. When not upgraded, it still does good AoE damage. I think it's a good balance there. But right now, KDong's still pressing the issue. There's a single Magmadon and some Spriggans. Not enough to deal with these now upgraded Exos. I assume they have their Quick Draw Hustle ability. Is that the name? Either way, there's a Exo upgrade that allows them to move faster. It's essentially rewarding you for Stutter Step. You move faster after attacking. And once they start stacking up that veterancy, they become quite solid units. But you do need some medtechs. That's a lot of Magmadons. Oh, the Magmadon's got a model upgrade, by the way, in case you didn't notice. Definitely looking a lot better here. And now you gotta be a little careful. Those Gaunts are chasing it down. Those Magmadons all popping out. This is a bit of a fragile army that's really dependent on taking on a bullying fight. Oh, the Magmadons can trample down the trees as well. They don't care for nature. Anything that gets in the way. Very reminiscent of an Ultralisk in StarCraft 2, where essentially a small rock or like a Lego or something will make it impossible for them to do anything. But we're reaching those later game stages here, where, well, we haven't seen any mech out of KDong. A very Brood War-esque medic, totally not marine situation here. But on the other side, for the Infernals, now we have a new unit, the Hellborn, which is a long-range artillery unit to match the Atlas. Oh, just stomping through with the Magmadons. The Hellborn does a long-range splash attack that looks very much like hurling a basketball. And when it lands, it spews shrapnel behind it. So essentially, you target it at the front, it does damage behind. It's not huge damage, as you see there, but it adds up and it has a lot of range, so it can help out a lot against these Exos. But with this many medtechs and some well-upgraded, some well-experienced Exos here, the Weaver can be used. Oh my god, he's body blocking a bit with the Lancer. The Weaver has an abduct ability. I believe it's called Lash. I'm not sure. That can yank in units like the Medtechs, which I assume he was using it for, but it just didn't work out. Couple of Hellborn on the back line, trampling through with the Magmadons, but a single Lancer is tripping up a lot of the ground units, and the Exo count has grown dramatically. The Exos still doing a lot of damage. There's no way to easily... there are no basic upgrades for the Infernal Host. They have unit utility upgrades, and once you get... Oh, I heard some imps with Flame On. Where are they? I heard the noise. They have a very dramatic noise. The Hellborn getting caught. The Fellhogs try to get into the fight, but they're much more of an early game situation. The Bio Ball here is just cutting its way through. Hellborns from the backline, just not enough damage. Good micro back from KDong. I love the new upgrade effects as well. They look a lot more specific to the unit. You can definitely see the healing and, oh my god, the Flame On Imps. Oh, but he uses the System Shock ability. The System Shock ability on the Medtechs, which is a tier 2 upgrade. allows you to both purge any movement speed debuffs, like occasionally there are stuns, as well as increasing the movement speed of units in the area. So KDong whips out the system shock and hits effectively the medical stims and gets those units out of the way. And Greg is starting to crumble as once you start losing these bases in the shrine production, units are built out of their production facilities, which store charges. Very similar to, imagine each building like I do, which is a mini hatchery. Each production facility stores up to 3 charges with which it can build its sort of units. Whether it's brutes, gaunts, magmadons, you still have to have the money, but they build very quickly once you use those charges. But right now, KDong clearly has gained map control. I think that fight from Greg early, where he lost control of, he wasn't able to really get damage done to the Lancers. And then KDong committed to attacking that southern base, that one down in the center there, is what really made the difference. And now, because KDong was able to get to Exos relatively comfortably, the Spriggans just didn't get the work done. Sure, they were annoying, but they're relatively costly, very Mutalisk-esque, and I don't think they found enough space. It's not over, and especially, wait, because if the Magmadons are able to trample, and maybe some Imps are able to come in with Flame On, then that could make the difference here. But right now, the momentum is just so much towards KDong, as he has some of these well-upgraded. GG! Greg taps it out. And KDong will power through. And here you see the bracket with both these players pretty comfortably making it through. We go straight into the Boneyard with absolutely no hesitation. I believe we just edited the video. But I do want to go back for just a few moments. We didn't even really talk about the creep camps. And the creep camps are an important part of the early game, especially the vision camp. But later on, they're not really... They're helpful, but not the be-all, end-all. You're not getting items from them. You saw that system shock right there. They're not getting items from them. You're not getting... you get some veterancy if you are Vanguard, but it's not a significant amount compared to... go back now. It's not a significant amount compared to fighting enemy units. So, KDong's on the board now as we go into the Boneyard, which I believe is our largest map so far in Stormgate. I like the direction we're going. We didn't even get an opportunity to talk about the new habitat, some of the more unique mechanics, which we can get into now. Let me know if it's too much like drinking from a fire hose when it comes to the commentary. I mean, this is effectively my first cast of Stormgate as well, so hopefully you enjoy. Hopefully you're able to follow along as I'm trying to keep up, and I've played the game a lot, so... but both these two obviously well experienced. KDong, amusingly, I will say, not using a single mech bay unit to start things off, but I think that comes down to a smaller map. You can gain momentum, those smaller ground units. He wasn't forced to play defense. Seen a lot more mech bay usage as time goes on, and hangars as well. But let's talk about the unique mechanics of each faction. So, KDong showing off the Vanguard multi-build functionality. Between the overcharge and the multi-build, which does have diminishing returns, think very like Age of Empires. Damn, that's fast. Wow. With the multi-build functionality, you can get 2 bases up more quickly. And having, I believe, the most efficient number of bobs to have on each base. I'm still not sure what bob stands for. It's supposedly an acronym. But put your suggestions in the comments. By the way, it's a command post first strategy, which is a bit riskier for sure, as the Infernal host can definitely get units out early and potentially contest it. But I think this is KDong really playing to the sheer size of the map And assuming that Greg is doing what he's doing right now, which is getting those resource camps. Because the Infernal host gets kind of a double benefit. Much like the Vanguard gets XP, if you bring along a Gaunt, you can infest and gather more Fiends. Fiends do very slowly lose their health from when they're off of the Shroud. But it's incredibly slow, so it's not particularly relevant. But if they do just sit off of the Shroud forever, they will eventually degenerate. It's like a very, very long-winded version of Broodlings, actually, in StarCraft 2. So KDong using the Howl ability, which is a big AoE sensor sort of drone on the Scout. The Scout is also an acronym. Also not sure what that acronym is, but it's a Robo-Dog. Okay, the Robo-Dog does exactly what it sounds like. All right, Greg making his way around. He's actually snuck in. KDong does have a sentry post ready, and he does have a Lancer inside, which means he's got the Buzzsaw sentry post, which doesn't have as much range or anti-air capability, unlike the flat cannon we saw before. KDong's attacking his own command post as a protest. Wait, is he actually trying to use it to bounce? Because it does a... He may have been trying to extend the range of the Buzzsaw by attacking his own command post. And I think it's working. Yeah, to an extent. So it does have that ability to bounce around and do damage, especially against larger groups. It is a great counter to those early Fiends. And the Bobs repairing themselves over there. You can also put a Bob in the sentry post and make it a repair post. But this is Greg saying, you can't just go command post first, all right? Like, gets another Bob. It's a significant portion of the economy. There's no easy way. You can't drop mules. Can't really chrono boost. The only way is to increment out Bobs here. Oh, the Gaunt splash damage as well. It also bounces through, much like the Buzzsaw blades. So we see the Gaunt slowly but surely actually killing the Bobs here, just by attacking the command post. So the sentry post, much like the Shroud Stone, also has a very light but noticeable attack that discourages activities from small amounts of units. Oh, that's what the new repair... Okay, it looks pretty sick. Greg has tried to keep the pressure on, but KDong had his expansion up and running, and he had both his barracks there. So his main base, while exposed, is defended for now. And those extra workers that he got from the natural base, I guess... now, interestingly, in Stormgate, you don't have to have your base in any specific location. Though so far, ideally, you have your base in directly horizontal or vertical, like 90 degrees. If you're off-center, then you actually will be slightly less efficient. But overall, there's a bit more opportunity for creativity than there is in StarCraft 2 about it. Same goes for Therium. So Therium... or as you can see, the little rocks on the right side there, is used for pretty much all your tech. Only your basic units and workers, like Brutes, Lancers, and Bobs and Imps don't take any Therium. But you mine it over time. You mine it at like a basic rate if you have the basic rocks over there. But if you don't mine it for a time... Okay, we got to talk about this. If you don't mine it for a time, it enriches and it mines faster. And you can get the happy rocks for those of you who played Factorio. It's very similar. So, if you hold off mining a base, it will create more and better Therium over time. So you sometimes want to mine it all as quickly as possible to mine it out. Or you want to just get it quickly so they can't take it later. Wow, those upgraded Lancers. But we saw a Doombringer, which feels a little on the nose. But a transport vehicle here from the Infernal host. The way it drops off units is it slams into the ground, which also splays out Shroud around it. That Shroud gives those units that extra white health is what we're calling it. I'm calling it shield because that's effectively what it is. It degenerates over time when you're not on Shroud. It regenerates when you're on the Shroud. Shroud shield might work as well, but I'm calling it shield because that is effectively it. I think it regenerates in combat as well as long as you're on the Shroud. Yeah, as you can see there. So it definitely increases the sustainability of your units, but at the same time, fighting that many Lancers with gaunts is not going to work out. An overcharge. Overcharge is about the closest thing to a outright macro mechanic. There's also the solar habitat. You can upgrade your habitats, or your supply structure for Vanguard, with solar habitats now, which allows you to produce, and we see it right there. It allows the structure that you're targeting to produce more quickly, as well as providing more supply. I believe it's about 20% faster. So it's like a combination. It's essentially a chrono boost, but with a double supply depot. Ooh, and using the radar post. I believe he puts a scout in there in order to create essentially a watchtower, or at least a sensor tower style. Oh, and there's the sensor dog from the command post, or central command, the CC, that unlocks that. We do have similar armies to the previous game. And again, Greg is going to try to press towards the main. The less entrenched position. Going to use the Doombringer for the Shroud here. And KDong doesn't have that many units. He uses the Shields Up ability to put a defensive matrix on his Lancer in the center there, using some of that energy. You don't have it on the overlay right now, but there's some energy that can be used to add essentially an overshield on top of these units as well. Just one unit individually and targeted down. I think there should be enough Lancers to force the Gaunts into the Doombringer, and it should be able to get away before the Exos are able to track it down. But still, a pretty strong attack out of Greg. But this is going to get dragged into almost certainly a longer game, as the sheer distance between the players. I mean, that's part of why Greg has taken the Doombringer here, as just walking across the map through some of these trees is simply quite an ordeal. Is that a third shrine? And some Magmadons. Ah, the sensor dog, or drone. I don't know what it's called. It's definitely not called sensor dog. It's just a placeholder. Has scouted this, and there wasn't any anti-air to stop KDong from seeing the base, but the Magmadons have something to say about it. I don't think he has the trample stun upgrade yet, but it still does a lot of damage and forces the units back. He is upgrading it now from the Shadow Cleft, which is very similar to a high-tech sort of building from StarCraft 2. But, there's a lot of chunky units back here. There's not that much from KDong, but don't underestimate the strength of the Lancers, especially with medtechs behind. As those Lancers are quite tanky, and the medtechs are able to keep the healing going. They will run out of energy, but they do add a bit of DPS themselves. They're not terrible. So it looks like KDong gonna try a fight here. That seems a bit optimistic, especially with a Hellborn on the back line. But using those Exos. All right, whipping out the basketball, going for the dunk. And KDong trying to press the issue. He hasn't added any other sort of units in. Still just focused on this more bio army. The Fiends targeted down. The Gaunt as well. And KDong, there's nothing to really challenge this at the moment, it seems. He just doesn't have the army where he needs it. Looks like Greg getting outmaneuvered by the Exos. That Hellborn looking for a shot. And the Magmadon's trying to flank here, but KDong knows the strength. And actually just pre-splitting the Brutes into Fiends, which you can do manually. So that way you can actually track down the army. The only unit that can really chase down these, and trampling his way through, slamming into the midline. And with the Hellborn on the back, the Fiends surrounding another trample, staggering the tramples. One Lancer distracting the other Magmadons. But it looks like KDong will be forced from this position, losing a lot of his well-experienced units. And the veterancy experience doesn't count for much when a Magmadon comes slamming into your face and a Hellborn basketball dunks into the back line. But the Lancers are cutting forward, even a scout getting in on the action. Gonna turn around, the Magmadon's still crushing through. Just, here I go, stop it again! Meanwhile, another, just kind of a sideshow It looks like KDong. You cannot lift your buildings, but you can salvage them. I think all beside your command post for 100% of the cost as Vanguard, though we haven't seen too much of that being really utilized, as usually you need all of your buildings whenever possible, and it gets interrupted by damage. Meanwhile, Exo's backing off, gets the sentry post finished. Surprised he didn't garrison it with anything. Slaps one in. There's the flat cannon. Something to help out. What is that? Oh, using one of the infest abilities out of the Infernal Host. I'm not actually sure which one, but that will debuff the few units in range. There are some top bar abilities now in Stormgate, which we can't really see because the observer interface is still work in progress, though I trust it'll be great in time, based on who they got working on it. But overall, he weathers it, and those are some upgraded Exos now. He needs to keep him alive. KDong backing off, and the medtech kind of caught out in front. One of the Magmadons wandering off into the sunset, and now pin-cushioned by the Exos. But reinforcements coming in, slams his way through the sentry post. Magmadon killing more of the Bobs here. Upgraded Exos, potentially vulnerable, but also doing a lot of damage to the Magmadon. Alright, the rallying units will be forced back. Looks like Greg has managed to take the Therium. Oh my. Having a rough day. That Exo. Using the solar... Ooh, massive Therium field. Vanguard has the ability to mine Therium with refineries. Whereas for the Infernal Host, you gotta build a shrine nearby. They don't have any sort of refinery building, because generally they have significantly more workers, but their imps do turn into their buildings. I know I'm kind of going back and forth on these descriptions. I'm trying to get all the information out there. But there are some distinct differences between the Bobs and the imps. The imps can blow themselves up and destroy huge amounts of Bobs. The Bobs can repair if they survive it. Some other key differences. Bobs also gain veterancy over time, though. They have to be a bit more violently inclined. I think that's a graphical bug on the Exo there. A Fiend split. A lot of Bobs, so definitely quite a macro game here. It looks like 3-4 bases for KDong. We have 3.5 to 4. It's not a hard and fast rule because the Therium doesn't necessarily have to be anywhere nearby the Luminite. So, a massive Therium field here. Yeah. Not sure how much either of these players need those resources at this point. A lot of it, in my experience, comes down to production once the economies get high enough. You need 5+ production facilities for each sort of unit you want to build, and some Vulcans on the field. Vulcans have a Gatling gun that spins up over time when they're able to stand still, and it pierces through units and does a huge amount of DPS, especially once it gets spun up. You can also get the jump jet upgrade, which allows it to stay spun up while it's moving. So generally a good counter to larger armies when you just, your weaker bio units aren't going to cut it. Oh, those Hellborn, though, really starting to stack up. He's got like 6 of them. And now the damage. 1 or 2 before wasn't cutting it. They remind me a bit of Tempest from StarCraft 2, the Protoss Tempest, which can do okay damage, but 1 or 2 isn't enough. You're going to need 5 or 6 of them, and then now that's something to be respected. We'll see if KDong adds any Atlases in the something quite similar to a siege tank. AoE area denial, though also a potential danger to your own units as well. So you got to be a bit careful about that. Hellborn blasting through. Should be targeting the backline when possible. Speaking of which, the Fiends wrap around the back. The Medtechs getting kind of cornered here, which means the Hellborns are able to maximize their damage. Magmadon stomping in, doing those mini stuns here, but the Medtechs are keeping everything intact, starting to run low on energy. And the front line is just melting to the well-upgraded and well-experienced Vanguard line. And so far, KDong maintaining that core of his army, and so the Infernal Host just unable That looked like quite an army. But with those medtechs on the back and the Vulcans doing a great job of cutting through the Fiends, and now some fully upgraded Exos. A dragon! A flayed dragon. Which, if you gained enough, I believe it's called Animus, which builds up over time as you kill units. It's like the ultimate veterancy. You get a flayed dragon, which puts stacks of... Well, it stacks up an ability that allows you to do more and more damage over time, and it does a lot of damage itself. It's not going to win the fight, but I'd say the closest equivalent to is a mothership that actually does damage. It's quite expensive. It takes a while to get, but it is kind of the ultimate Infernal unit. It's gone through several iterations so far in Stormgate, but wow, this is the newest model as well. This is the first time I'm seeing it, because rarely do you see it in the game. Usually you're losing if you see it and you're not the one building it. But a bit of a desperation move it feels out of Greg, as he's just not getting the damage. The sheer amount of medtechs here is patching everything up. And while Greg still has a solid economy, he just doesn't seem to be able to put together an army. I don't know if he needs flame imps, but KDong has found the secret sauce of an army composition, though he's mining out of Luminite in the main. He's got a bunch of idle bobs there. And that means well, in general, Luminite will run out. You can technically get some from creep camps, but in case you were worried about this game being too focused around creep camps, I don't know if either player has taken a creep camp in the last several minutes. I think there are some resource camps in the center that offer like about 100 Luminite, maybe a bit of Ethereum. But overall, especially past the early game, the creep camps are mostly a sideshow compared to the actual fights and the focus on the economy. There are some speed camps around the side as well. Speed up your units for a short time, but mostly so far out of the way it almost doesn't help with anything but counterattacks, which might be what Greg needs to do, as that dragon clearly didn't do enough to turn the tide. And now the Vulcans chewing through, the Lancers, everything, just tapping it out. KDong again builds the Vanguard Death Ball and is able to cut through, surviving the early aggression.
You guys back and forth a little bit. It seems like
I think we got some commentary.
Greg, you don't have an answer.
I forgot if that was the thing.
The Vanguard sort of just heal balls
Greg,
there.
Is it impossible to beat?
You're having trouble penetrating his force there. What are you thinking going into this last game?
Yeah, I don't know what to do, so I guess I'll try something new.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we tried
Greg.
usage of Hellborns and Magmadons to try to deal some of that AoE damage to his ground forces, but it just didn't seem to be doing too much.
Yeah, I need to trap him, and so he can't kite back, basically, is what I was trying to do. But
you're very successful, I felt.
That's KDong
on one of the
talking.
fights, and I thought I was dead.
There was one where he traded very well in the middle. Yeah.
The one where I was at your third, like the first fight at your third. I think I picked off a lot of your units before, but still, like, and that might have evened it up, but I thought I lost, like, the actual fight.
That's your
'Cause
Discord,
you
not
split
theirs.
your
Totally
roots
different,
and then
guys.
surrounded by Exos while you, while, like, the Magmadon
Like
hit
and
my
subscribe if you
Lancers.
tabbed out. I believe that was just edited into the final version of the final video. I was... did catch me a little off guard as well, but we're going into the final match. I think I'm going to have to do Greg some justice. And if we get those 1,000... What, Jimmy? 1,243 likes. We'll cast also the first two games of the series, which Greg did win, to be fair to him. But KDong seems to have solved it for now. We'll see if Greg can come up with something, but he's a bit lost. So I'll let you in on the early game balance complaint meta. Infernals are currently considered overall stronger and there is a leaderboard, stormgateworld.com, made by the makers of AoE4world.com, who do a great job. Shows you a leaderboard, and I believe like 35 to 40 of the top 50 players so far, though you'll recognize a lot of names, are playing Infernal. Because Infernal, for the most part, can really snowball from the early game. If you get a good fight with Infest with those gaunts, you're able to turn that into potentially a winning position. Also, this is not a mirror matchup. There are mirror matchups on the ladder. So a lot of players just getting particularly good at a mirror matchup will make you find a lot of success. But where was I? Getting a bit sidetracked there. But yes, Infernals are currently kind of like Zerg in that you can rush early and often and probably find a lot of success, especially against players who really haven't dealt with a certain strategy before. And Vanguard requires a lot more build-up. And we've seen that in these games so far. Is that a biokinetics lab rush? I wonder what tech he's going for first. KDong opting for the equivalent of the biokinetics lab unlocks the upgrades for barracks units. It's essentially the tech lab. And it also unlocks access to the medtech and exo unit. So it's more like a cyber core, I guess, in StarCraft 2. So, and he's getting it on one base. He didn't go for a quick command post at all this time around, KDong. So, I'm not sure what he's opting for, but he's clearly... Hey, he's building Lancers. Getting the kinetic redirection upgrade for your Lancers may very well... And he's oversaturating that Therium. So, the Therium... I think the general rules around 5 workers on Therium, and it will refill at the rate that you mine it. As you see more little Therium patches popping up there. You can, if you really need a bunch of... If your Therium and you need it now, you can put 10, 20 workers on there. I don't know if you can put 20. It might be like 1 per patch. But you will mine through it, as each patch is like 50 Therium. So... But that does add another layer of the tech strategies I find really interesting. Hasn't been nearly as developed as we're very early days here in Stormgate. But I think that is actually probably the most interesting and different part of Stormgate compared to StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2 with a very set amount, like you always have your gas geysers, which mine X amount with X workers at Y time. Whereas with Therium, where and why and when you mine, and even how to an extent, is significantly different depending on the build, depending on the time, depending on the map. And I'm open to a lot more creativity on that idea, because I think that is an interesting way of limiting the ability of players to go for certain builds. I'm not a huge fan of StarCraft 2's, like, we should have exactly the same map with a reskin or possibly a door here on this map and a door there on the other map. No, I'm not a fan of that. I actually really like Age of Empires kind of procedurally generated. I don't think that's going to work for Stormgate, but something a bit more creative than the same layout with different skins would be ideal. Uh-oh. Greg showing up early here. Did he pick up a creep camp? I think he picked up the speed camp, and that helped him get across the map quite quickly. But the Lancers are there, and I believe they have that redirection upgrade. Micro's back 1. The Bobs are pulled. He didn't actually finish his buildings at the natural here. He's going back to the health camp, which has a slow heal over time, because he doesn't have any med techs at the moment. The Gaunts are starting to chew through the Bobs, and that unleashes additional fiends. And he didn't actually... This sentry post not being done feels like a critical mistake out of KDong here. As having that buzzsaw post may very well have made the difference, but this is just a straight up... This is pretty close to the equivalent of like a 2-base all-in out of Greg. But he's just overrunning it, and I think the difference... And he just taps it out. Greg will be your Frost Giant tournament.
Wow.
Oh my.
Let it
That could have changed the whole...
let it go late again. He would have stomped me again. So thank you.
Everyone's celebrating on Discord.
It wasn't anticlimactic at all.
think so. It
I
was
have a feeling if I let it go late again, he would have stomped me
So
again.
Greg's like, I need to win. I need to cheese
There was a sentry
him.
post and a barracks that was almost done producing right when you arrived at his doorstep. And if those had been finished and, Kevin put a Lancer in there or something like that,
I agree.
like that could have brought...
Let's see if KDong has it.
2 Bob...
I would put a sentry post and proxy and put a Lancer inside it.
Okay.
So it was more of like a pressure play. honestly, I was making it up as I was going along.
Sure.
But at first I was like, I'm going to do like a
You ever
one
been there?
base Lancer push, which I had the upgrade when the first three Lancer poke, and didn't do that much. And then I was but he had so many units, so I was like, oh, this isn't gonna work, so I just retreated.
Yeah.
I think I should have probably like speed built my sentry post. That was my mistake.
I agree. I think with the sentry post, it makes it a lot easier to hold. It starts not kind of spiraling with the infest. So that makes all the difference. I actually want to go back. I noticed some pretty interesting fights in the other games as well. I just wanted to kind of keep this short enough that you would be interested in watching. I think this is... Oh, we see some hedgehogs here. This game... Winter, why did you show this game? There's some hornets, which are like a combination Banshee Viking out of the hangar. We actually see air units. I'm selling you guys short, but a little bit of something extra here at the end. It looks like this game got kind of crazy as well. Magmadons, Hellborn, just marching across. And how does the end fight go? Oh, he's got the Hornets. There's not much anti-air built in except for the Gaunts. Gaunts and Spriggans are pretty much all of your anti-air options. Oh, well, I forgot about the Shadow Flyers, which are Scourge. Oh, but using the return to hangar ability. Oh. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, if we get those likes and subscribes, there you go. So, what happened there is if you use the return the hangar ability on a unit, it will automatically send your Vanguard unit, kind of like the retreat function in Company of Heroes, back to a hangar. But the Shadow Flyer, which is like a Baneling Scourge, and does AoE splash damage against the high ground, or against air units. Well, it caught them before they could get back to the hangar. Speaking of catching, the Weaver yanks in a Vulcan. And the Vulcan's trying here, but that's a lot of Hellborn. The evac, so similar to a medevac, but doesn't have that healing capability. The Hellborns are smacking through. I think after this game, clearly KDong focused a lot more on just the efficient bio units than the high-tech ones, which I've also, in my experience, they're good to support, but making them a core army composition just doesn't pan out. But hopefully you enjoyed some Stormgate. I'm just putting this on in the background. Hopefully you enjoyed my cast of it, and hopefully you want to check out more. So this was not a paid promotion. I just like showing good games for the fans. I'll be honest. I haven't been... every version of Stormgate has gotten significantly better thus far, but this is the first version where it truly feels we're seeing like a real split of strategies. It has some identity. I know a lot of people have commented on how similar it is to other games. I think this shows a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences as well. And I think it's really shaping up and worth a try. It's free. And it's going to be free as well. So it costs you nothing but your time and energy and your mental stability, like most RTS games. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you next time. And I hope to see you on the beta as well. Give me suggestions on what else you want to see. I don't know how to do the outro for Stormgate yet, so we're just going to freestyle it. Good luck, have fun. I'll see you next time. Stay chill.